Now question 3, unfortunately previous class I think we struggled very long on question 3. So I decided that I will give you guys more visualization by drawing out more things. Hopefully that helps, because I don't think it's that easy lah. Okay, let's try this. Okay. Alright, so how we're gonna start approaching this is we're gonna first think about how we validate whether something is repeating. Okay? Whether something is a proper subarray that repeats. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna show you visualization for this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're gonna literally use this same example all over the place. So for 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 is a repeating one. And for us to tell whether it repeats, we can actually check what are the possible subarray one by one. Now, to check the length, right, we always start from 1 because to be constituted as a subarray, it has to be at least at 1 element. Make sense? Right? You cannot have a 0 element subarray. Now, the maximum size of a subarray is technically the full array, but the question very specifically told you that, I believe they did. They very specifically told you that a subarray must be smaller array than the original, not an array of the same length as the original array. Yeah, so they very explicitly tell you, but in some cases, if they don't tell you this, subarray can be treated as same length also. But if in doubt, just ask. This kind of question can ask, okay? So then if that's the case, right, what is the biggest possible repeating subarray for this question? It will actually until n over 2. Why n over 2? Because if you look at I equal to n over 2, in this case 9 divided by 2 is actually going to give you 4. Not 4.5. 4. Okay, so then you will realize, right, when I start doing comparison, 1 and 5 don't match. Tada, no good. This actually fails, right? Is there a point for me to check 5? I actually have no reason to check 5 because the moment is like longer than n over 2. The length already don't match. The last element got nothing to compare to. No good. So there's no point. Okay, so what we can do is, we don't know what is the length of the subarray. We won't know whether it's 1, 2, 10, 20 for the length of the subarray. But what we do know is that we know for loop. So we'll just check every possible length. The subarray means at the start, right, the starting part has to match with the rest of the array. Right? That is the first subarray. So by having length 1 being the subarray, like, so we guess first, okay, is length 1 possible? We check that with 1 over here and 2 over here, this is not matching. So we know that there's no length 1 subarray. Now we increase to length 2. 1 and 2 over here compared to 3 and 1 next. Then I realize 1 already don't match 3. This is not a repeating pattern, not a valid subarray. Then I check length number 3. You realize 1 and 1 over here check each other. They actually like kind of match out. And then after that, subsequently, you kind of see that each of them match. Now then after that, of course, we can't just stop at the second. This is the second subarray. This is technically the first. Alright. Now I need to check the first and I need to check against the third. Is there any difference between me checking the first and the third? And then do I need to check the second and the third? No, because first and second is the same already. A bit no need to check. So you always just need to use the first one to check all the remaining one. Now this helps us to think about how we're going to actually write the logic. Okay? So here is what you're going to do. You're going to have 2 for loops over here. So we are only going to talk about the logic of comparing. The first one in your for loop, the I, is the position to start comparison. I'm going to explain in a bit. And the J is the offset for the comparison. Now what do I mean? Now take a look if length is equal to 1. So if I assume that the length of the subarray is equal to 1, and I'm going to start I as 1. Okay, Don't care why 1 first, but let's take it as we're gonna start at 1. If I position is here, and the length of the subarray is 1, notice that if I store j as 0, okay, j and j plus I, I'm comparing what I had above here, correct? I'm comparing what I have over here, this comparison, okay? So j and j plus I creates this comparison for me. Now next, I already know that there's no match, there's absolutely no point for me to continue. Now, what if length is equal to 2? And I'm going to say that I is equal to 2. Now, I is equal to 2 means that I'm going to start comparing with number 3 over here. And if j is equal to 0, j and j plus I gives you the comparison of this. You see that? So, that actually gives me that 2 comparison. And I can already tell there's no match, no point to continue. Now, we know that the actual repeating number of length is 3. So let's see how this works out here. Length is 3, I is equal to 3. So I actually starts from here, this position, right? Because this is 0, 1, 2, 3. Index, ma? Okay, your ID index. So notice that my j and j plus I is actually comparing the 1 and the 1. So if I increase j, I'm comparing the 2 and the 2. And I increment the j one more time, I'm comparing the, oh Jesus. Comparing the 3 and the 3. Okay? So I'm actually comparing each of the numbers as they should be, right? So what is this magical I and the j that I come up with? It will be obvious with the next one. Now, my I from 3, I increase to 6. What's the difference between 6 and 3? 3, which is the length. So each time I'm increasing my I by 3, and I'm skipping 0. Notice that my I started from 3, not 0. Because there's no point to compare the same subarray. I mean, you can, pointless, but sure. If you want to, the code will still work. But what you can notice here is that I'm then starting j from 0, 1, 2 again. Now 0, 1, 2, that is just a for loop of in j equal to 0. And then after that, j is less than the length, right, which is 3, right? So 0, 1, 2. That's how I get that iteration over there. So then you notice I have j and j plus I, j and j plus I, j and j plus I. Ta-da! And then that's how I can do the comparison for each of the subarray. Get the visualization so far? Does it make sense? You all see how we iterate the logic here? The nested for loop, the I and the j. Sink it in. Okay, that's it, I think. Yeah. So that's the visualization. Any clarification first? Because I think this is the hard part. If you survive through the hard part, we jump back to code. It's easy already. Anyone? All good? Okay. We jump back to code. Now, so to write the code, right? We know that we want to iterate through different length of the array. And how can I iterate through the length of the array? Like what we say just now, the length of the array gonna start from 1 because you can't have a sub-array of 0 elements. And we are gonna stop it at the exact moment where it is equal to n divided by 2. There's really no point to go beyond that because the first array is gonna be longer than subsequent array. There's nothing to, it's never gonna match. So then after that, I can just do this. I gives me the length of the subarray that I'm checking. Okay. Now with that, I can actually check the length of the subarray. And what do I want to check next? Is I want to check whether for this length of the subarray is a valid repeating pattern. So I'm actually going to create a helper function to help me with that. So I'm going to say is valid repeating subarray. Okay, and for me to do that, I'm going to say that the full array, I'm going to pass it in there. I'm going to pass the in n, which is the length of the whole array. And then I'm also going to pass in one more thing, the length of subarray that we are checking for this round. Okay. Now once I have this, what I can do is I can actually just check if is a valid. Okay. And then what I do here is I just put I in here. So this function is supposedly telling me whether it is a valid repeating subarray. So if this function says true, I can just return I. Okay, so this is what the helper function is doing for me. If the function says true, I return I because I is the length of the subarray. Else, if every length I check already is impossible, then I just return -1 because there's no possible subarray. Okay, so we're done with the main function. Now we just need to figure out how to code the helper function. Now the helper function I showed you just now, all I need to do is I need to iterate I and j, where I is the position to start comparing with the first subarray, and j is the offset for each subarray during comparison. Okay, so writing this, I know I'm going to write 2 for loop first, so I'm just going to start writing the 2 for loops. I less than, because I know that this is the position to start the comparison. I know that I shouldn't go beyond the array, because I is the one that actually allow me to choose the array. And then after that, I know that there's a sub for loop over here, nested for loop, where this is the offset for the comparison. So since it's the offset for each subarray during comparison, it's actually the index of the array, which just now we saw in the case of the j is actually 0, 1, 2, right? So it's actually until the length of the subarray. So j is less than the length of subarray and j plus plus. Now this is the loop that I'm going to check for the whether it's a repeating subarray. And what I need to do is I just need to check. Okay, I'm going to declare the value first. The position that I'm on, the first subarray element for comparison is actually going to be array I. This array I is the position as where it is. Now, the second one, I'm actually going to check the subsequent or like the checking subarray element. So in this case, it's the second subarray onwards. Every subsequent subarray, right, is going to be equal to I plus j. I plus j give me whatever that's on the subsequent. And then finally, I just need to check whether the value here is equal to the value there. If it is equal, it's good. But if it's not equal, it's bad. So not equal, return false, because not matching. And finally, since it iterates through every element and is valid, I return true. That's it for this question. Now, the difficult thing to visualize here is of all this, the helper function to try to write the check. Because some of you guys, I mean, you guys are only introduced functions last lesson. So you all might not still be very sure about when should I add new helper functions. In generally, it's always easier if you can put one logic into a function. So in this case, I'm doing some sort of checks. The checking itself seems to have a nested for loop. I can create a function for it. It will make my life easier. But can you do this without a function? Yes, you can. Yeah, but it's damn messy lah. Don't torture yourself. Now, remember I said that you can technically start the I with 0, but probably the best thing to actually start your I with is length of subarray. But of course, there's still something wrong with my code here, right? The length of subarray is actually why, because I want to start checking the second array onwards. But the more important thing is that I'm gonna make a change that like try to let you all see why I'm making the change. So you realize, right, just now my I in the code is I plus plus. But if I do I plus plus, look, I started off with 3. If I plus plus, the next number is 4. If I go to 4 next, what will happen is I will start from this position. Notice after I check finish the first 3, I'm checking like the second of the first 3, which don't make sense already. So I should check whatever that is subsequent. Since I check every length, like the amount I check every time is equal to the length of subarray, I just plus equal length of subarray. So to do that, I just need to change the plus equal to length of subarray. And this should work. It's J.
Oh, nice.
Okay, done. Okay, my bad. This is why you don't use J and I. Okay, guys.
Why do you use that?
Huh?
Why do you use that?
Actually, I also don't know.
No,
I mean, usually I write the full name lah, but okay, my bad. Sorry for the intermission. Okay, but so J is the offset. So actually, I'm using J. Coming back to here, you realize that J is the one that I'm supposed to use, but just now I use I for some reason now. Okay, so J is the one that actually brings you to that offset, and J plus I gives you the one that is subsequent subarray onwards. Yeah, I tells you which subarray it is, and then J tells you what position of that subarray is at. Okay, we're done with this. Any question?